Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss American Trading. You are tuned into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash, where we take a hard look at some of the changing dynamics in our financial markets, our economy, both domestically and globally. I have with me my co-host, Chris Agelastos, who has proven to be invaluable in sharing insights into the look into
Aw,
the secret war that we are all experiencing on our cash. So, Chris, thank you for being here yet again.
of course.
And we will get right after it here today. So this is kind of not a new topic and not something that people tuned in are not familiar with because people with wealth, without wealth, rich or poor, this is something that applies to all of us and has been applying to all of us. And that what I'm talking about is price inflation. Things just getting more expensive, it seems, everywhere we turn. And in this first article, looking at it not just being something that we're having to deal with here in the United States, but this is a global phenomenon, we'll call it at this point. Not a good global phenomenon, but a global phenomenon
Mhm.
where global food prices reaccelerate for a second month as the situation remains, quote, sticky. I think it's probably a good, just as good a word as any to talk about what's going on with our food prices, with inflation, et cetera. And as they get right into it here, Chris, they talk about the various indexes, the cereal price index, which increased a
Mhm.
little bit. Sugar price index that increased quite a bit actually. They had the dairy price index
Mhm.
going up. The meat index was one that actually went down, and that which I found interesting because it went down 0.3%, largely due to in Western Europe, I guess they slaughtered a lot of pigs. And the part I found interesting about that was that, um, the price of pork would have that much of an influence on all the other meats out there to, make it go down by that
Yeah.
much. But the moral of the story is, and again, this comes as no shock. We all eat. We all go to the grocery store. You'll see in actually the one of the things that was posted, through by Zero Hedge, that the global food prices jumped most in 18 months as the supermarket, excuse me, inflation storm worsens. And so not good news. Things are more expensive. We know that. I guess the question is, Chris, do you think that we're nearing the end of seeing all these pretty rapid price increases on our grocery bill, or is this something that we might expect to see for some time to come still?
No, I think it's here to stay. Now, will it change a little, go up a little, go down a little? Sure. But what they're talking about specifically here is 2% up from the prior month. But what's more important is 5.5% increase from a year ago. And so you and I both know the numbers can fluctuate, month to month or quarter to quarter. But when you look at these longer windows, that's what's really impacting people. And 5.5% up from a year ago. A lot of people have been happy here in the U.S. the last year or two to be getting about 5% interest on their money if they're in some longer term CDs or high yield savings accounts, and people are pretty excited about that. But what this shows is that your trip to the grocery store is costing you that 5.5% more, actually even a little bit more, half a percent more than the average of what people were getting in their savings accounts. And so it just goes
Right.
to show you that, inflation is a real beast. And, even these little bits of gains in interest rates are just barely enough to keep up with inflation. And what I did like about this article too is it kind of points out the how things going on globally can affect our prices here. You mentioned the rising wheat prices. A lot of that is due to the conflicts over in Russia and Ukraine. Sugar prices, because of the higher oil prices, they're using more sugar cane to produce ethanol, and that's causing sugar prices to go up. Dairy prices, they cite in here, international cheese and butter prices climbing, and so that's causing the dairy price overall to climb. And again, even the pork and poultry prices were down a little. Beef held steady. But again, these are all international things. Some of it, a lot of it actually, we can't even necessarily control here, but it still affects us, and that's the kind
Right.
of global marketplace we live in. And unfortunately, I think these increases are here to stay. Whether it's you know 2.5% next year, and we're all cheering because it's cheap, that means prices still went up 2.5%. And if your wages aren't keeping up with that, if your savings isn't growing enough to offset that, you are going to continue to feel the pain.
Well, and to your point, with it being a global situation, it just speaks to, as we talked about many times, that the that's kind of the problem is like these issues that we're having to deal with now, the debt, the deficits, inflation costs, by way of food costs, energy costs, whatever it might be. It's a giant wheel with a lot of spokes, and
Yeah,
so my point is that even if you have a broken spoke, let's just say that's the inflation, that's the rising food costs. That spoke is not independent to the wheel. I mean, there are so many other spokes that even if that one situation is per se remedied, it doesn't change the fact that it's related to a lot of other issues out there. But to that point and problem, really none of these issues are being properly addressed and properly dealt with and gotten rid of. And I don't believe it's something that we will see go away anytime soon. So, in fact,
yeah,
looking here at the second article that CC will put up here, very much so related to this. Americans have burned through their pandemic savings, and when I was reading this, it's something I wonder is like if the average person out there really understands that there is or was such a thing as pandemic savings. And to clarify for those who aren't, I mean, during the pandemic, when the government was subsidizing people because of what not being able to work, excuse me. Um, these were monies that were put into basically a form of savings for a lot of people. And there's two things about this, Chris. That number one, again, now it's being depleted, and that's a concern because if the people, if you'll see in the second paragraph of this article, the personal. Well, I'll read it here. Let's see, the expensive personal saving. This is what's been happening in our economy. Personal savings dropped sharply in 2022 when the personal saving rate, the shares of people's disposable income that people weren't spending on consumption, taxes, or interest payments, dropped to the lowest levels since the financial crisis. And the reason I want to highlight this is that people have had to dip into their savings. Those savings are now gone. If we didn't have people with the savings, this money that was basically, in a manner of speaking, kind of gifted to them through the pandemic,
hmm
we've been hearing a lot of how tight things are for families and households out there. How much worse would our situation be if not for this? But
right.
the problem is now that's gone, and that, again, I say kind of gifted because that's money that came out of nowhere. Now, if the savings rate is dipped or dropped, what are people going to do when now are in a situation where the credit cards have been exhausted? Many times people have had to go into their retirement accounts and savings, and again, this being reflective of that. Now what? And again,
Right.
there's really no solutions that are being offered out there in terms of what are they going to do to, you know, either let inflation kind of cool off a little bit, bring the grocery costs down a little bit. I mean, where do people go from here, Chris? Where does this whole story end?
Yeah, and really, that's a great point. The only reason we've been able to make it this far through this sort of, I guess, mild recession is because of that savings that people were able to build up, and a lot of that, yes, it was stimulus payments, but people were also working from home, so they were driving less. Some people went down to one car instead of two. Restaurants were closed in a lot of states and cities in the country. So people were eating out less. People were cooking at home more, saving money there, and then inflation really started to heat up in 2022, and that pile of savings has sort of lasted people this long. But yeah, now that they're running out of it, I think we're going to see defaults on loan payments. Probably credit cards and vehicle loans first, maybe then followed by second mortgages, and if this continues, first mortgages, and that could cause major problems in the economy. I mean, we lived through it in 2008, end of 2008 through about 2010. We saw a lot of defaults. I mean, we knew of a lot of people even in our immediate circles that weren't, paying their car payments, weren't able to pay for their mortgages. I know some people that were living in their homes for, a year and a half before they even got evicted. So many people, or repossessed. So many people were not paying their bills that
All right.
the banks didn't even necessarily have enough resources to go in and kick them out of their house. They figured it was better to just leave them in there. At least they're maintaining it for them until they could go in and refinance and whatnot. So I think we're going to see, unfortunately. I mean, I hate that sometimes people tell me I'm Debbie Downer, and I swear I'm a glasses half full kind of guy. But we have math for a reason, and when you look at the challenges that people have with the low savings rate, and you look at the inflation that we've been talking about for the last several years, at some point it's going to come to a head. And we were talking in our previous podcast about Buffett stockpiling cash. I think this is one of the reasons. Companies are going to, especially lending institutions, are going to feel the pain from people not being able to pay for everything, and so people are going to pick the most important things, and everything else is going to start falling behind. It could cause a major market crash and some big issues in our economy. So hopefully those of you listening to this aren't in this situation and you have plenty of savings, but statistically speaking, a large portion of our country is going to be affected by this.
Right. It is interesting too that there's actually a category, pandemic savings, that exists out there. I mean, that's
Yeah,
even a thing. I mean, it's been something that clearly has been beneficial to a lot of people, and that's great. But it's just the fact that that's even a category in our economy. It
yeah.
kind of blows my mind a little bit. Well, thank you for that, Chris. And the secret war on cash, again, it's a real war. If somebody wants to find out more about that, Chris, what do they do?
You can visit us on the website, swissamerica.com. That's www.swissamerica, all one word, .com. Or give us a call at the toll free number, 800 2646. We have people that will answer questions for you. Or if you just want to get the information, just tell us where you want it sent and we'll get it off to you. We're very low hassle. But if you are looking for some guidance as well, maybe you're not sure what to do with your savings, or you're concerned about your own situation, we can set an appointment with you. We do not charge to give people advice here. We'll help you figure out the best way to navigate your situation, and hopefully help you avoid some of these pitfalls.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. And thanks for sharing, Chris. And if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, please do so. Follow us on social media as well. We'd love to stay in contact with you. And we look forward to seeing you again when we bring you more information and news pertaining to really each and every one of us in our everyday finances, our economy, the things that are just having an everyday effect on all of us. So thanks again. Have a great rest of your week and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Take care.